بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده ونشهد أن محمدا صلى الله عليه وسلم عبده ورسوله. We thank Allah and we worship Him and we ask His guidance. We seek His forgiveness and we worship Him alone with no equals or partners. He has given us the guidance through His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And our Prophet said in his famous خطبة الوداع لقد تركت فيكم ما إن تمسكتم به من بعدي لن تضلوا كتاب الله وسنة رسوله. The Prophet has told us that he is left in our midst two things that if we adhere to, we shall never lose the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. The Quran and the Sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah tells us that we, the Muslim Ummah, were the best nation ever revealed to mankind. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. With two qualifications. To be that level, we need to reach the two qualifications. Two things is that you believe in Allah and you enjoin the good and forbid the bad. If we see something inappropriate, we ought to show that and reflect it in our behavior and in our conduct. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us, من رأى منكم منكرا فليغير بيده فإن لم يقدر فبلسانه فإن لم يقدر فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. Prophet tells us that if you see something that's inappropriate, munkar, change it. If you can, with your hand, by applying pressure. And if you can't, by verbs, by dialogue, by talking. And if you can't even do that, do it in your heart. Don't accept it. If we do that, then we will be deserving of Allah's mercy subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will be deserving of Allah's support. Yesterday, a lady came to my house. And she was demanding that I speak with her husband and force him to change. And what came to my mind is the issue of changing, tagheer. I know the husband, and he's not a bad man. And I know the wife. And she's not a bad lady. But the differences in opinion sometimes opens the door for the shaitan to come in and instill in our relations hardship and trouble. And Allah tells us إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. But Allah will not change what's in a nation or a people or a person until they change what's in their behavior and their conduct. And the issue that what we need to address, look at, is how do we implement that change? Each one of us will be in that position, regardless of your age, or your ethnic background, or your culture. Each one of us faces that. And I see it across the board. It's not just in Muslims, but it's in Muslims and non-Muslims. And it's just not in any specific ethnic group. This is a generic culture that we all have in our behavior. This is how Allah created us. But Allah has given us the remedies and the ways to change. An example. If you see a young person, we have students here, if they spend 3 or 4 or 5 hours on the television or playing games, how do you change a behavior that is basically a time-wasting behavior? By spending an hour or 2 or 3 a day playing games on television, you're wasting your time. And remember, time is one of the things that Allah will ask you when you face Him on the Day of Judgment. He will ask you, how did you spend your time? And we have to have an answer. If I see my son or my grandson doing that, how do I inflict that change? How do I apply my knowledge to make my son or my grandson or your son change that behavior? One thing you can do is just shut the TV and take his computer away from him and basically force him to apply your method to his life. Does this really work? If you want your wife to wear a hijab, or your daughter to wear a hijab, or your sister to wear a hijab, do you force her? Do you insist that she has to do this, or else you will cut her salary, you will cut her allowance, or you prevent her from going out? Do you achieve that by forcing your opinion on someone else? The answer is no. And Allah tells us, وَلَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. We have a good role model in our Prophet's behavior. The Prophet never forced anyone to do anything. Never. How do you apply that change of behavior in a person? Force, you can make him, force him to do what you want to do while you're watching him. But once he grows up and leaves the house, that son is going to do what he wants to do. The more effective way is to convince that person to adopt your thinking. And if we see the Prophet's seerah, that's what he has done for 13 long years while he was in Mecca. When he spoke with the mushriks and the Qurayshis, he didn't have the means of forcing them, But in more than one instance, Allah has given him the option and the choice to apply force, and he rejected that. And he chose what appears to be the longer, harder way of changing and applying the change in a community and in the individuals. And that's by convincing people, not by forcing them. You force someone to behave in front of you, but once you turn your head away, he's going to do just the opposite. I've heard stories of people who work in a restaurant and how you tell them, take this steak and cook it a little more, what they can do for it. So applying pressure is not the way to deal by making the change. The first way of applying that change is to find an alternative. If my grandson is spending 2, 3, 4 hours watching television and playing games, and I don't want him to do that, the first option is to find him an alternative. And this applies not just, I'm giving this example as an example because at least me, when I listen, I want an example so that I can realize how I can understand the options in front of me. But this applies for you as a father, this applies for you as a teacher, this applies for you as a business owner, this applies for you as an employee or as an employer. Find an alternative. The second step, besides finding an alternative, is to try to dialogue and try to, the Quran describes it as al-wa'd. And al-wa'd is not to give a lecture, but to create a friendly conversation between you and the person you want to influence. And this reminds me of Musa alayhi salam, when he was traveling back to Egypt with his wife, and he saw a fire from a distance, and he thought he may be able to get some advice and guidance and support from that fire. He thought it's people who were camping away. And when he arrived at that place, he was startled by a voice that started dialoguing with him. Scary, but it was, in a way, attractive to Musa. And when Allah told him, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا مُوسَى, Allah is asking him, what's in your right hand, Musa? He could have told him, it's just my cane. But Musa enjoyed the conversation with Allah. And he tells him, Ya asai, that's my cane. But because he enjoyed the conversation, he advanced it and said, أتوكأ عليها وأهش بها على غنمي ولي فيها مآرب أخرى. I have many uses for it. Well, that's not what Allah asked him. Allah asked him, what's in your right hand? He said, yeah, just answer, Ya asai. But because he liked the conversation with Allah, and he is tentative, he wants to listen, and he wants to give back and forth, so he extended his conversation. When you talk to your opponent, or to the person that you want to convince him of your idea, make him feel that there is anas, make him feel that there is love, make him feel that you're not ordering, you're not dominating, you're sharing with him. and explore. Let him open his mind to receive what you're about to tell him. So the first is to find an alternative. The second is to try to engage in a dialogue that shows love and understanding. Often, we see young married people divorcing, and the rate of divorce among young married Muslims is going higher. It's approaching the level that we see in a non-Muslim community. And the reason is that hardship in our conversation. I can understand that maybe back home, when marriage is basically imposed on you. Your father or your mother picks your bride, or your father or your mother picks your husband. But in this country, most of the young people are married because they have acquainted each other and they know, and there is some love and some communication between them. That communication gets interrupted, changes after seeing what's wrong with each other. No one is perfect, and we all have mistakes, and we all have shortcomings. And I remember a story of two patients of mine who came to me. They were grown-ups, husband and wife. I thought they were husband and wife. And they brought their children even. Their children were 19, 20, and 22. And one day, these two people, I thought they were husband and wife, came and they asked me to give them a blood test for a marriage certificate. This was in the 80s, when marriage required the blood test before you apply for a license. And I thought that they wanted a marriage certificate for their children, but they said, no, it's for us. And I said, I thought you were married. They said, no, we are common law husband and wife, but now we have learned that we are compatible with each other. Took them 22 years to find out that they were compatible. And I was happy for them. I did the test for them. They got the marriage license, and they were married. A month later, and for the first time in their history, one of them comes to me. And I said, where is your spouse? And the answer was, you know, after we married, things changed. How? What happened? He said, just things changed. She doesn't listen to me anymore. And a week later she came in and she said, he doesn't listen to me anymore. We're not compatible. After 22 years of compatibility, they were not compatible. What has happened? The behavior changed. The expectations changed. When they were not married, they knew that there was nothing binding. Any one of them can leave any time. But when they got married, the husband felt that he owns the wife, and the wife felt that she owns the husband, and within a month or two, they were divorced, they were separated, and the children went alone. So it is the behavior, it's our expectations, it's our understandings that results with the outcomes. We said the first thing is to find an alternative. The second thing is to dialogue. Dialogue in a way that you are not imposing your ideas. And the third one is never to use force or punishment on the other person. If we follow these three things, we will be able to communicate with each other in a better way. And we will be able to come up with better results in our life. And we will be able to live in a more harmonious way that will be beneficial to all of us. Adults and children, parents and children, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters. I've had stories about a man who doesn't speak to his sister. Why? Because she doesn't listen to him. Without communication, relations will sever. One day, a mother came to me, and her son was in college. He's a man. And she wants him to change his behavior and take the courses that she wants him to take. And I told her, he's a man. Give him the option, even if he makes a mistake. Let him make a mistake and be right behind him to help him stand up again. She comes back a week later and she says, I did give him the option, but he still wanted to do what he wants to do. And I said, Subhanallah, you're not giving him the option. You think you are, but you still want him to do what you want him to do. This is forcing someone without convincing them with the results. Brothers and sisters, if your son doesn't pray, or if your daughter doesn't pray, don't force them, but pray with them. Try to encourage them. If you want to call it, bribe them. If you want to call it a bribe, but bribe them. Let them get used to doing the right things. All of us want tranquility in our lives, and that tranquility will not come unless it is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. Those who believe and find tranquility when they remember Allah, by remembering Allah, the hearts will find tranquility. If you're stressed, don't expect that you will have a happy life. The only way you can be happy is by having that tranquility, and the only way you can get that tranquility is by communicating with Allah. And we as Muslims have that prayers that will help us constantly communicate with Allah. Our goal is to have a society that is complementing itself. And the society is made of individuals, just like a house. If the individuals are good, then the society is good. If the individuals are corrupt, then the society is corrupt. You build a house from stones and bricks. If the bricks are brittle, the house is brittle. If the bricks are strong, the house is strong. And our strength will come by increasing our communication and by finding tranquility, and that tranquility comes from our relations with Allah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. Brothers and sisters, الكلمة الطيبة صدقة. The kind word is a صدقة. والبسمة في وجه أخيك صدقة. A smile is a sadaqah. And the more sadaqat you have, the more rewards you have from Allah in this life and in the hereafter. When the angels came to Ibrahim alayhi salam and they told him that you will have a son, what did Sarah, his wife, say? She said, أَأَلِدُ وَأَنَا عَجُوزٌ وَهَذَا بَعْلِي شَيْخًا. Would I have a child? And I am an older woman. And Ba'li, what does it mean? My sweetheart. All these years, they're married, Ibrahim and Sarah. And she calls him my sweetheart. That's the relation that we want in our community. When you talk to your wife, call her sweetheart. When you talk to your mother, address her with love and respect. When you talk to your neighbors, show them what you care for. This week, an incident happened in Carolina. You all heard about it. 3 young Muslims were executed. Gunshots to the head. Why? I don't know why exactly, but the police say it was because of dispute over parking space. There are some who believe that the person who perpetrated the murder, not that they believe, but he on his Facebook says that he's an atheist and he dislikes the extremist Muslims and the extremist Christians. And some believe that this is a hate crime. Whether it is or not, what I wanted to bring your attention to is what the newspapers locally there and on the internet, I didn't hear it on internet, on national news, but they described the 3 young people, a man, his wife, and his sister, as people who spent time volunteering and helping the homeless. To me, yes, we lost 3 young Muslims who were active. But that's a plus sign. They are described as good people who help the community and help the society around them. That's a plus. Whether the man gets convicted for hate crime or not, to me, the Muslims have scored. Scored because we came out as victims who have been society-loving people who have given their time and effort for the sake of the society. Tonight, in this masjid, there will be a vigil at around 7 o'clock. The mayor and the media will be here. If you have time, join them, please. Join them so that we can show the true face of Islam and Muslims in this country. Brothers and sisters, on every Friday there is a moment where Allah will accept dua. Maybe this is the moment. Feel the presence of Allah in our midst and ask Him and be sure that He will reward us. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. O Allah, give us guidance to be your obedient servants. O Allah, give us the wisdom to follow the path of أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وأقم الصلاة.